Happy Wonder Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back to our Floxies community live show. I hope you're doing well wherever in the world you're joining us from. And you know what I like to do here. I like to get together every Wednesday with our community, but I also like to see who's watching us in the audience. So if you're with us here live, please let me know in the chat, drop a comment, and interact with us as much as possible. And if you're here for the first time, we're Floxies, an international community for women in UX, UI design, and Webflow development. We're a very active Discord community, but we also get together for our live streams we try to do these events every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, but we've been quite regular for the past 3 to 4 years. So it's always a pleasure to hang out and learn from expert speakers in the industry. So today we will be talking about a new library that's been implemented onto Webflow, which is VisualDX by Ailín Tobin. So without further ado, let me show you what that's all about. And I'm gonna get here onto the bottom left. This is our metaverse where we host our streams every Wednesday. I need to redecorate the area, but this is where we do our co-working with the community. And I'm now stepping into our auditorium, which is where the magic happens. And it's good to see all the other Floxies that have joined us ever since I left. So happy Wednesday, everyone. Happy Wonder Wednesday. It's great to see you all back here in our community, and a very good welcome to our speaker, Ailín Tobin, today. Hi, Ailín. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me here.
It's a pleasure to have you back. I know that last year we were fortunate enough to have you as a regular speaker teaching our community a little bit of HTML and CSS. And we'll get to your introduction shortly, because I would like to maybe tell our new Floxies here where your expertise comes from. I know that you're a developer. You've been doing amazing stuff in Webflow and not. So you're one of the people that I refer to as superheroes, because you can literally just go outside of the box when it comes to Webflow and web development. And we at Floxies, we've been looking at a variety of frameworks and libraries that could be used to implement and elevate our Webflow websites. And speaking of libraries and new libraries that can, elevate our sites, I had to invite you because you've been showing the community and gifting the community with this new amazing library called VisualDX. And I wanted for you to introduce it to our community as well and tell us all about it. So Ailín, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing today and what your library is about.
Okay, so I suppose to start, and it's kind of a good point. The last time I was talking, last time I was on Floxies, we were talking about HTML and CSS, which is the bones of what Webflow is. We've got this amazing UI that helps us create HTML and CSS without having to write it. Now, Webflow also helps us create a little bit of JavaScript, and that's in the animations. When you use the animation tools, creates little snippets of JavaScript, which allows our animations happen. So I suppose what I've built with VisualDX is another layer on top of Webflow to allow us use JavaScript easily. And I know JavaScript for a lot of people might sound very scary. It is like a programming language, and even the thought of it to some people can be quite frightening. But if you think of it in its simplest terms, it just allows us to do things on our website, allows our websites to do unusual things or things that are different to just HTML and CSS. And if we start from that point, it isn't actually that frightening. But then I tried to, with what I've built out, so I actually built it more for myself so that I don't have to rewrite JavaScript every time. So in kind of coming to the idea of producing this thing called VisualDX, I had all these pieces of code hidden away in different projects and started compiling them together and putting them in one place, and then coming up with an easy way for us to access that JavaScript without having to write it.
I love that. So pretty much like a no-code, drag and drop set of JavaScript snippets. Am I getting
Yeah,
it right?
yeah. So it's copy and paste more than drag and drop.
Copy and paste.
Yeah. So if we have like vanilla JavaScript where you write a function, I I wanted to this function to do something, and you write that, you put it into the Webflow head or body as a script tag, it'll do something. That's like vanilla JavaScript if,
Mm-hmm.
in its basic. But then we've got tools like FinSuite attributes, which some people may have used, which they take advantage of this idea that if you have an attribute, which is a few words, and it can trigger JavaScript on your project. So I don't know if many people have used FinSuite attributes, but it's an amazing resource and amazing library. Um, and what I started noticing though is that, not noticing, is what I've always kind of seen, was that there's some very simple functionality in Webflow or on websites that Webflow doesn't give us access to. And I honestly, the
Because
way this started was I just wanted to have an auto updating year in my footer.
mm-hmm.
And that's how this whole thing started.
I love that. I love that it started just for a simple, well, we think, it's a simple use case. Maybe it's a simple one, but it's one of those things that you have to constantly manually go ahead and edit every year, right? And so I love that you started off from something as, allow me, just something as basic as that to then develop a whole library on top of it.
Yeah, and just I suppose the with a lot of solutions with JavaScript, what they do, so in our HTML, we've got our classes, we've got IDs, and we've got attributes. And these are just like words for they're all essentially attributes, but what they do is you can use them to your advantage. So like with an ID, if it says ID footer year in a piece of text on your page, you can target that. You can also, if you've got your class that's also footer year, you can target that too. And the same with an attribute. I use attributes in this instance. You can target those. But the reason I don't use IDs and classes is to, especially classes, like we were talking about frameworks, HTML and CSS, we've got MAST, we've got client first, and some people write their own. If if your JavaScript is triggered based on classes and someone changes that class, then your function breaks. So this is why I've used attributes. It's why FinSuite uses attributes. And there's actually tons of other tools out there, even like MemberStack.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole library is based off of attributes. So a small bit of background to why it's an attribute over anything else.
Would you say something that's like completely necessary, like something that would help you develop faster and more efficiently, like to implement attributes, for example?
It's, in my opinion, it's safer. It doesn't make it any better or
Mm-hmm.
worse. So if you go into Claude or ChatGPT and say, give me a script for a footer year, you'll get it in 10 seconds. And if it gives it to you with a class and you set it up correctly, there's no issue with that. But the risk down the line is if you have, you change framework, for example, and it doesn't fit the syntax of the framework, then you could break that piece of code.
Right.
So I just see it as a safety net more than anything else.
Brilliant. And so let's see how you got from your, changing the year every year into developing your library. Should we get your screen going? I know that
Yeah.
you've prepared a nice little presentation for us. And Floxies here in the room. If you have any questions or comments about what you currently use, attributes, libraries, frameworks, let us know in the chat. We like to keep these events as interactive as possible for you guys.
Okay. So
Brilliant. And thank you, Andrea,
okay. So
for
this
sharing the link.
is yeah, so this is just the home page. And in here you can see, if I refresh it, a few things are happening. Like we've got auto-rotating tabs, we've got some fun hover effects, got count up, back buttons, and read time, and even like clocks and stuff happening. So all of these things that are going on here are triggered by VisualDX, and even some fun tooltips here. So it's just, I suppose these are just examples of what can be done with JavaScript, but these are the snippets that I've already set up with VisualDX. Now, I suppose where I'm going to start is footer here. So this is literally the thing that started the whole thing. And I think the easiest thing to do is just to go through a demo of how to set this up and how to add it to your project and how easy it is to get this auto updating time this year on your project. So I've already got some pre-built stuff set up here. We can also, no, we can't. Sorry.
You're trying to share Webflow and...
Yeah, one sec. I'm going to go out of this and then share window, right?
Yeah, I can see them both. VisualDX in a tab, and now your Webflow.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all know it's not 2024 anymore. And I don't know how many. I actually looked at a website of mine that I built maybe 3 years ago, and it still says 2023. So
to be fair, I feel like it's 1984 right now, but hey ho.
Hey, nice. But yeah, we'll
keep the
so
politics out.
We will. So, at every year, if you want, you can go in and just change this number to 2025. And, there's no issue there. But I'm lazy and I don't want to go into every single project every year. So I was like, how do I make this easier for myself? So with VisualDX, what we need to do is we literally just go to the starter project. We copy this script. Just see here, it's just might be scary, but it's just a CDN, which is just a piece of code that is hosted somewhere in the internet. We copy it. We go into our project. So I need to go into the project settings, down to our custom code, and we add it into the body. And that's it. That's how we set up VisualDX. That's how you initialize it and make sure it's working. And we'll just publish it there. And then we'll go back into our designer and I will show you how easy it is to set this up. So footer here, I have it down in essentials because I literally think this is essential to every website. We go in and I've set this up where you come over here to this. Now, is this big enough for people? Can we see it? You come over here and you just copy this attribute. And I haven't fully explained what an attribute is, but hopefully it'll become more clear when we get into the Webflow designer. We literally go over here, we copy this, we go into Webflow, and I'm going to wrap this number in a span. So how we do that is we highlight the number and we go to this little icon here, click on it. And what this is doing now is putting another piece of HTML inside our text. What this is here is a H1. And then in the settings of the span, I'm going down here to this, probably my favorite tool in Webflow is this custom attributes feature. We click on a new one and inside the name, so the name is the top input. I'm just going to paste in the attribute itself and then just save it. And then once we publish that, provided I haven't broken anything, we have a website that now has an auto-updating number. And it's just very simple, but
yeah,
it's
so
something
effective.
I think it's so this is literally how it started. Is I wrote this and I was like, okay, I want to be able to call on this piece of code every single time. And that's how I came up with starting to publish it to a CDN and going from there. Now, this is VisualDX at its simplest. I'm going to go now, and I don't know, has anybody built sliders in Webflow and tried to use the CMS?
Given the amount of help requests that we see in the forum at least once a week about them, yeah, I would say a solid yes.
Okay.
And I can see people nodding as well.
Okay, so literally, I think it was a week or two ago, I finally finished this piece of code, we'll just go through. I've built out the Apple, a version of the Apple slider. It's a bit ugly here, but give a bit more space padding.
Ailín, Nicoletta is asking if it slows down the website in any significant way at all.
No, because it is there is sometimes a flicker because the JavaScript waits for the website to load, and it's not going to affect your bandwidth with Webflow because I'm hosting it on a CDN somewhere else. It's got nothing to do with Webflow. So that's one benefit. Anytime you add like layers of code, there is like a bit of a lag, but it's not going to significantly slow things down. Also, once the browser caches the code, remembers what the code does, things run nice and smooth.
Nice. That's what we like. Nice and smooth.
So now I've built out this this slider in Webflow, and I'll go through how it looks, and because it's completely custom, it's not the Webflow slider element, but the result is pretty cool. So in here, I'll zoom in just so that we can see. Got a slider wrap. I've got a collection. I've given it the name slider list wrap. And inside that, there is the collection list. I've given it a class of collection list. So maybe just so that people can see without the classes, I'll take these off. So it's just a Webflow collection. And then inside that, I've added the card that I've built to make it look like an Apple
product. The product word is really important.
Yeah, I'm not going to design. I'm going to steal other people's designs, basically. Okay, so I'm just going to try and get these classes back by, yeah. All right, so we have our collection, and the collection is inside this wrapper. And then down at the bottom, we've got a slider. We've got two buttons, one called slider previous, and the other one called slider previous copy, because I was being lazy, and I'll just call it next button, and I will call this pre button.
Nice. Love a good naming convention. And welcome to the people watching on YouTube. There's an interesting fun conversation going on about Webflow shirts with Isabel and our friends from the Webflow community. Yeah, they were like, "Hey, mofos," and I'm like, "Mofos," and yeah, we're already, you know how we are. We're already thinking copyright, making shirts. That's it. New Hellfest. It's happening.
All right. So once we've got this slider built out in Webflow, it's quite straightforward to get things set up. So we've already added in the script. Now, this is one of the fundamental difference between VisualDX and other solutions out there, is that it's one script. You don't need to go back in, copy a new script, put it into the head and the body, or do any of that. So all the code is all there, and all future code will all be in that script as well. So if there's ever any updates, like for example, if someone has used VisualDX a month ago and Slider just got released this week, then they have access to this, and it's already there for you to use. So we'll just go through what we've got going on here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy this slider attribute. And you can see here in the docs, we're saying we're going to put it into a div. And in the docs example, I've called it slider, but in here, I've changed it to slider wrap. So I'm going to change it to slider, so just so that we're consistent. And just like with the footer here, I'm going to drop the attribute, paste the attribute into the name. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to target the collection list. I'm going to go down here and copy this attribute, and I'm going to drop this attribute into the custom attributes of the collection list. So in this example, it's called slider list. We just go down and we drop the attribute in there. Sorry, this might be a bit small, so I'll zoom in.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're dropping, literally what I'm doing is on click over here, you can copy. And then I'm being a bit of a cheat. I'm pressing Command V and pasting it in.
What a cheater. Naughty Ailín.
Yeah, actually, I went a little bit too far there. So we've got our slider list, and what I'm actually doing is I'm dropping it into the list item, because as you can see here, this is called slider slide. So what we're targeting is the slides. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down here to the collection item. Now, VisualDX takes advantage of one of the most underrated things and under talked about things in Webflow, and that's Webflow's CSS transitions. Now, I know we've got IX2, the Webflow animations, and they're awesome. And we're going down the route of working with GSAP and all that. But I love CSS transitions. So what we need to do here is we need to make the slide flow, make it look like it's not going janky and one by one. So we're going to, again, we're targeting the collection item, and we're going to give it some transforms. Now, what these are, if we've got a collection item here, we go into our style, we scroll all the way down here, we've got this thing called transitions. And inside here, we've got loads of fun stuff that we can use. You know, there's so many cool things that we can target that very few people actually talk about. And what is happening when a slider moves position is it's transforming and it's changing position. So we can go here to transform and add 500 milliseconds, and that'll be the time it changes. Or if you want to be really lazy, you can go all the way down here and just say all properties, give it 500 milliseconds and an ease.
So would you say you're using a mix? So obviously, it's built on top of JavaScript, but is it a mix of that plus the Webflow native features, or?
Yeah, so a lot of people would have used some, maybe Swiper.js or Splide. And what that is, they're like amazing tools, but they use JavaScript to trigger functions and add CSS and styles that may not be in your product. So some people may have noticed if they've used Swiper that maybe their slider in the designer is vertical, and then when they load it, it goes horizontal. It's one particular thing. So what I've tried to do is take advantage of what we do in Webflow as designers and developers and remove the unnecessary bloat of other products. So one thing that Webflow has, and all CSS frameworks have, is they have our CSS transitions. So what I'm trying to do is just take advantage of that. And yeah, we'll see how it goes now with the next few steps. So we have our slider initialized using the first attribute. Second attribute is we're targeting the slides. And then the next two attributes, what we're doing is we're going to make the buttons work. So in the slider previous, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I copied the attribute and pasted in VDX slider prev. And then I'm going to copy VDX slider next. And just with this, oh, it's already in there. Just for the crack, I'll paste it in. So let's just see what has actually happened with this setup. Now, you can see we've got our setup here. If I click, our slider's working.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. Like, we had to just drop in 4 attributes into the right places. And we added onto the slide item, or the collection item itself, some transition. And we've got a nice functioning slider. So if I, for example, add this, we'll change this to 2 seconds. So the thing to remember when we're working with transitions is that they're in milliseconds. So 2000 is 2 seconds. This will be a poor user experience, but we'll just see how easy it is to make this update. And that's it. Like with other tools out there, you would have to go into the code and actually change that the transition in order to do that.
And that's
Now,
what would make the website a little bit heavier, isn't it? When you start adding those sort of, like you were mentioning, other sort of libraries that people could use, or I've seen, people using the native slider in Webflow as well. This seemed quite straightforward and quite light compared to everything else that I've seen.
there will be more in other tools. There definitely is more JavaScript in order to do what you need to do here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not. They're not. It's not so heavy that it should be a concern. What I'm more thinking about is, as a Webflow developer, I'm thinking about how to use Webflow and add a tool to Webflow. Whereas with other tools, they're thinking more like of broader HTML and CSS builds. And one of the things with us is that we're visual developers or visual designers, so we like to be able to see what we're doing, and
Absolutely.
and so that's kind of why I went with this approach.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that you can just transform it and interact with it straight from the editor. Like, I love how interconnected the two things are.
Nice. So the one thing, when we right.
Yeah,
So
Irina says she's gonna try it tomorrow. I missed her
nice.
message.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
she was saying, I love how nicely it's integrated with Webflow. Yeah.
So the next thing is with your buttons. The way, like, you can choose to, if you want your buttons to be visible on load, or if you want them to disappear or become muted or anything like that when you get to the end of a slider. So I've added this. So before we were talking about VisualDX using attributes, it also takes advantage of classes. And I've got a slightly unique class naming system in order for us to do fun things with it, but it's also so that it doesn't look like anything else and people won't decide to change it and they shouldn't break. So we've got this class here called VDX inactive. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy that and we're going to drop it into our buttons, either side. And this may already, so I'm going to just drop it in there and you can see it's actually already happened. So what I want is that on load, so VDX inactive is added to the first slide, the previous button on the first slide, and the next button on the last slide. So what that means is that when you get to either slide, they become inactive. Now, without styles, I'll just have a quick, when this publishes, just show you exactly what I mean by that. When I click on this button here, nothing happens. But when I click on this button, it starts to work. And now that we're over here, this button will start working again. So that's to prevent the slider coming on and off screen. So that's pre-built in with VisualDX. And on page load, in this position, the class VDX -- inactive is added to the button. So we can take advantage of that. And basically, I'm just going to copy what Apple have. And on page load, or when the slider is in position 1, the opacity of the button is down to 0. So this is kind of a cool thing that we'll see here now. I'm going to put in a transition of opacity and we'll give it 500 half a second. You can also, without publishing, you can actually just test how this looks by adding or taking away our class from the style selector. Now you can see here that when we add inactive, it's kind of cool. It's got a nice transition, but when we take it away, it's clunky. It just arrives. And that's because I need to add another opacity transition here. And now we're starting to look pretty nice. So I'm going to do the same thing for over here. When it is inactive, I want it down at 0. I'm going to give it a transition of 500 opacity, and same with this one. Test it out. Looks good. Now I'm going to publish. And we can see here, this is the previous version. And I'll refresh it to be published at this stage. Yep.
Oh, nice.
See, the button is gone.
Yep.
Then on first click, it arrives.
Love it. Nice and smooth.
So it's nice and easy. And then we've got our nice, and you can see there when we went back, it disappeared. Now, there's another cool thing. Like if we go to apple.com, and so basically what I'm doing here is I'm copying this design. And on hover, you can see the button arrives. So before hover onto the thing, the button disappears. So when I was building out this example, I actually realized that I'd already this pre-built in with VisualDX. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take advantage of, I'll go back here and see where it is.
And I love the fact that you can see the preview of your code and like your snippets here. So you don't have to like even research what each of these things do and what they mean. It's what you were saying is visual development. So we like to see what we're about to achieve. So I love that.
Yeah, I'm so visual. Like
same.
So this is kind of why, like even just looking through that nav on the side there, I was like tripping out. So look, we've got this fun one here called child hover state. You can do this in Webflow with IX2. There's no issues there. But this takes advantage again of CSS. So it will make your website a little bit lighter. Ironically, though, you have VisualDX on top of it, but it takes advantage of CSS. And if you can see here, when I hover over the button, we're adding an animation to the text. So on hover of the button, the child element itself is being being affected. Yeah. So we'll go in here, and what we will do is we will copy VDX child hover. And we're going to go back in here and to the same place as our attribute for the slider. Slider slide. We're going to drop in this attribute. And now what this is saying is that all of the children, and these three items here, these three elements here, are children of the slider, and so is everything in here. Everything now is a child of this particular element. So VisualDX is going to see that, and it's going to add this class, VDX hover, to each child on hover, and this gives us the opportunity to take advantage of Webflow CSS. So we're going to go in, like as we are with this example, the buttons arrive, and we're going to go into the buttons and see what we have here. So on active, so this is an active button. I want this to be opacity 0. And same with this. We don't want these to be seen. We want them to be seen on hover.
Mm-hmm.
So we add in VDX hover. You can see I've already been playing around with it. And we're going to put the opacity up to 100%. Also going to just make sure that the opacity works here, and same with the other slider. I've already got it pre-built in with the class. And in this instance, we're going to remove these classes, and we're just going to publish, and hopefully on refresh, yeah, the buttons are missing. And then on hover, this one shows. And when I come off the screen, the buttons off the slider, the buttons are missing. And then they're back on hover.
Nice. That's a nice reaction, Nicoletta. I saw her face. It's just like magic.
Cool.
Ailín, we have a question from Irina. She's asking, I don't need to create a combo class for every child, right? It's only for the ones that I want to be affected.
Only for the ones you want to be affected, yeah. The class is added. If you don't need to, but this is where I can see people getting really creative. Because there is a unique class added as a combo class to each of the elements, that means each element can actually do something completely different to each other if you want. So you can trigger a cascade of CSS animations, which I'm sure there's going to be some creative people out there that might come up with some cool stuff.
Some other creative people out there.
Different creative people.
Different. Nice. Brilliant. Well, and I know that we might have time, because I know that you possibly had another use case to do with a collection list. Is that still on the plate?
Yeah. I can show. I have another thing set up here. Okay, so in this, what I'm going to show is now this thing called nth child. Now, this is a collection list, and everything here is, it's like there's 3 different styles to this collection list. Okay, so one of the issues that we have with Webflow collection lists is that everything has to be very similar, and they have to be, you know, if you have things in a grid, they all have to fit the grid, or if you have things in a flex box, they have to fit that flex. There's also an issue with, I don't know if people have come across this, where maybe the design on mobile might be 5 items, or on desktop might be 5 items, but then when you make it smaller, the 5th item drops down and you only want 4 there. That's really difficult to do in Webflow. And this in CSS is called nth child, where you're targeting the specific child of a parent. Now, in this example that I'm going with here is it's just mini cards, and they're in this list. And then when they go down here, it's ugly, and I don't want it to look like this. Okay, I want it to just be 4. This is really hard to achieve in with Webflow collections. So what we do with VisualDX is we copy this attribute and we put it into the list. Same as before, drop it into the name. And then the next thing that we do is we have to figure out what we're targeting. So I say we're targeting a child of this parent. And you can see here that the example in the docs is we're adding in a value of 3. And this is the first time that we're going to drop in a value into anything. But here in this design, we have got 5 items, and I don't want this 5th item here. It's ugly, it's in the way, and I don't want it on this design, the tablet version of the design. So in the list, we put the value of 5 in beside the attribute. So that means we are targeting the 5th child element of this particular list. The next thing that we do is we go down here and we copy this combo class. And we're going to add this combo class to the item, the child. You can see it's already here. But what we do is we just paste it in. And because I've already built this, I've added the number 5 at the end of this class. Can people see that?
Yeah.
So this 5 has to be the exact same as this. So the value in the attribute has to be the same as the number at the end of the class. And now with this particular thing, what we're going to do is we're going to set this to display none. Okay, now this, nice facial reaction. This is kind of scary.
It is.
But what we have done here is we have hidden all of the elements with this class. Now, this shows the problem that I'm trying to solve with Webflow collection lists. We're going to remove this and we're going to publish. Again, I did miss out on a particular thing here. We're in the tablet version here. So in the desktop version, this should still be, we can see the item here. It hasn't disappeared. In tablet, everything has disappeared. And then in mobile, let's say we want everything to come back. So again, we're taking advantage of Webflow CSS and classes. But we've got this scary missing design here. So I'm going to remove this. And I'll republish just in case. I'm going to open up this particular page. We've got our design. And if I start making this respond, you can see that ugly little additional collection item has disappeared. And if we go down to mobile, it's back. Now, this is a pretty simple use case of making sure that we don't have, collection items where we don't want them. But we can do lots of fun stuff with this particular example.
So basically what it's doing, it's maintaining the desktop view, even though from the editor it looks as if you've hidden everything, but it's actually just repurposing the desktop view.
Yeah. So in what is happening here is that if I inspect this, I know this is getting a little bit techy, but you can see here, if I zoom in, that the class VDX nth
Mm-hmm.
child 5
Mm-hmm.
is added to all of the fifth, all the fifth element and all its children.
Mm-hmm.
So inside in Webflow, we can take advantage of that particular class. In this instance, we're hiding everything because of Webflow collection doesn't allow us target things specifically like that. But because we have built this class, added it to our style sheet, then on page load, that class will only be added to the fifth element, and therefore it hides it.
Mm-hmm.
And only when it's in tablet format. So
Irina
uh,
says this functionality is so powerful. It's a complete game changer. There are so many use cases.
thanks, Irina. So we started off with the most simple thing with a footer year. We went to sliders, which was probably one of the most called out, one of the most, since I started building with Webflow, the thing that everybody has wanted to probably probably the most complex thing in the VisualDX library. Um, but yeah,
Do you think that's to do with our behavior, like UX behavior of people just wanting to scroll? Like, why are sliders so popular and so frequent when people are asking to either design them or asking for help building them? Um, I wonder if it's down to our behavior as end users of just like wanting to scroll rather than.
sliders I've noticed became the more we've gone mobile
Mm-hmm.
first, sliders have become more popular, especially with sites, side swiping on mobile. Um, they went really out of vogue because, in my opinion, everybody had a slider on a WordPress website as their hero section, and they were just overused. But companies like Apple and Google, Netflix, for example, like their whole website is built on sliders, so they've become really popular again.
Nice. Yep. I was just getting out of the way there because that was quite the journey. I mean, from just the one use case of, I can imagine just a day where you were like, oh, I really need to find something that dynamically changes my year on my Webflow sites. And then you just went ahead and built a whole library. That was quite the journey.
Well, a lot of it is because I was just like hacking away and came up with these solutions, and I sent it to a few people, and they said, "Oh, well, what about this? What about this? Can you try this? Can you try this?" And that's kind of how it's grown, and it's still growing like that because I come up with a solution, but it doesn't fit everybody's needs. And yeah, so if you have an idea, just send us a message, and if I can set it up and add it to VisualDX, I'll happily do it.
Amazing. And with that, that's a nice segue to our Q&A, which I'm about to open. So officially opening our Q&A. So people in the
Well,
audience, YouTube, LinkedIn, let us know if you've got any questions in the chat. And obviously our priority goes to our Floxies here in the gather first. So if anyone has a question or comment, would like to talk to Ailín, our superstar, this is your opportunity to do so. And I'm monitoring the chat. Andrea.
Hey, hi everyone. Hi, Ailín. Loving the VisualDX. It's getting fun to work with it. I had a couple of questions regarding the slider. One is, how can we make it loop?
in development. Yeah, looping is quite
Okay,
tricky, but it's I'm working on that.
cool.
The one thing that this example didn't show is that there is, I know I'm not, there is also a navigation feature. So you can you can build out the navigation at the bottom, like the 3 dots or the multiple dots. And then the next thing that I am working on is loop.
Cool, awesome. And also, I don't think I've tested it that much, but what about the swiping effect in mobile? That's not happening right now, right?
No, that's in development as well. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, those were the only like 2 kind of basic things that I wanted to ask about. But
Yeah,
good to
yeah.
know
So
that
I am,
in development.
yeah, I'm just working on them. I just wanted to get it out as a V1 to kind of compete against what was already there, and also to just get feedback and see what people are doing or not doing. And yeah, loop and thumb swipe are two that people are asking about. So it's in the works.
TBD,
Awesome.
to be developed.
Yeah.
To be developed. Cool, cool. Do I have time for one more?
Of course,
Quick,
all the time.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, it's regarding the nest situation, but I
Yeah.
don't know if it's like still
No,
a secret.
you can go for it. Yeah. So there is also like a CMS Nest solution. And I know that FinSuite have solutions in there as well, but I think the one that I have is a lot easier.
Yeah, that's actually my point. Because I mean, like every time I've used, FinSuite's nesting solution like that 100 times, and not one time I've get it right in the first. You're like, there's always something going on, like wrong, because there's so many variables and everything, so a lot of things can go wrong. So how like your approach is way simpler. Like, how is the difference? How do you get to that? Like, and why didn't they do it like that? Like, were there like some things you had needed to negotiate or something, or how
Um,
did you?
I don't know why. I can tell you how I came up with my solution. I'm a very big proponent of a JavaScript library called HTMX. I absolutely love it. But HTMX is incredibly powerful if you're using a backend server. So it's too powerful for Webflow. And it's very lightweight. It's not a big library, but for Webflow, it's overkill. HTMX takes advantage of there's a thing, a get, like what a link does. When you click on a link, it makes a get request. So HTMX takes advantage of that. In Webflow, the link element is an amazing tool, or it can be very powerful. So in order to use the link element in Webflow using HTMX, you actually had to make HTMX quite complex. So I started at, I want to use the link element to pull something from somewhere else into my page and reverse engineered it from that. And that's how I got to this solution. So yeah, like my nest solution, or the VisualDX nest solution, I think it's just 2 attributes with a value. And you can multiple nest and you can deep nest. And the thing that's the first time I launched Nest, my footer year didn't work with nested items. So I've engineered VisualDX to work with all of the solutions, which some other libraries, it becomes quite difficult when you're using other libraries to do that. So everything here works within themselves. And it doesn't matter how many times you deep nest. If you've got a slider at the end of that, it'll work. But I don't know why their solution is more on-page stuff. So it's pulling stuff from one page, the same page, to a new position. Whereas I'm taking advantage of the link between 2 pages on Webflow and pulling stuff in that way.
Awesome, thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrea. Good to see your face as well. And any more questions or comments for Ailín? And I guess as people think about them, Ailín, what's next on your plate? I know that you have a few things that you want to develop. Are you currently just focusing on VisualDX, or are you working on other projects?
No, I have a full-time job. This is just side project itch that has grown. Like, people are starting to use it. People have found bugs. I've had to fix them, and that's it really. I'm just kind of trying to get it out there now and see what people think. But yeah, I've a full-time job, and this is kind of just a nighttime thing.
Yeah, but it's working out so nicely for you, and it's so useful, to the whole community. I've seen a great just reception of the new tool, the new library. That's the reason why you're here, because I've seen it in the chat. So I was like, I need to get Ailín. This looks really solid.
Yeah,
yeah, and I can see
and the
even
thing
here
is
in our chat today, even Aga says, love it, I will use it. I've seen it on
Great.
people on YouTube. So people are definitely excited.
Cool. And the thing is that it's like with every library, there's limitations.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm targeting is like the 90% first and 90% of functionality. So yeah, like I'll probably always miss the 1%, but I am targeting to get everything, to get it as robust as possible. Like I'm working on a filter solution and a search solution that works with Nest and all the other ones there. And I'm working on footnotes as well at the moment, and there's a few other functions in there that there might even be a few that are hidden deep in the code if people want to search for them and try and figure them out.
Something is getting traction when people start finding bugs in your builds.
Yeah. I want people to find bugs and tell me about them, and I'll fix them.
I love it so much. Well, thank you so much, Ailín. It's always a pleasure to chat to you and have you here as our guest. If you do have time, we can talk again about potential HTML and CSS refreshment in 2025.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
if you were to give a piece of advice to a Webflow developer today, 2025, what would that be? Besides using VisualDX, of course.
I think fundamentally, I've always said it, the Webflow is, if you deepen your understanding of CSS, it makes Webflow a lot easier. It doesn't matter what framework you're using, it doesn't matter how you write your CSS, but if you understand HTML and CSS, it makes life a lot easier, especially with the advent of the custom element that came out, was it last year?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding how to construct HTML elements that aren't native inside in Webflow, using that is really fun. Like, with that thing, you can build audio things, you can build sliders, you can build old school marquees that just work. So yeah, I would just get nerdy on HTML and CSS if you can.
I love that piece of advice. Well, thank you so much. And for everyone else here as well, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week. Applications for the Floxies ambassadors are open. So if you love this community as much as I do, you would like to help me keep on building it, please do apply. And let me know if you've got any ideas or feedback on what sort of topics you would like for us to treat next. We're very open to suggestions. And Ailín, you're fantastic. I can't wait to hang out in real life again with you, hopefully soon. And I wish you all the best. And everyone else here, have a great week.
Good
Bye,
stuff.
everyone.
Thanks, guys.